Learning outcomes. After studying this module, you shall be able to define perception and explain the factors that influence it, identify the main factors that influence what individuals perceive, explain attribution theory and list the determinants of attribution, enumerate the application of perception in organizational behavior, explain the link between perception and decision making, list the common perceptual errors, explain how individual differences and organizational constraints affect decision making. Introduction. Perception is a process by which individuals systematize and interpret their sensory imitation in order to give meaning to their environment. Whatever is perceived can be substantially different from objective reality. Perception is one of the most significant psychological factors affecting human behavior. It includes all those processes by which an individual receives information about his environment. Seeing, hearing, tasting and smelling, that is, it is a manner in which an individual experiences. People differ in their reactions due to a difference in their perception. In an organization, perception allows employees to interpret what they see and hear in the workforce effectively to make decisions, complete tasks and to act in an ethical manner. Now the next topic of discussion is, what is perception? The most famous definition of perception was given by Joseph Ritz, who says that perception is a process by which people organize, interpret and experience ideas and use stimulus material in the environment so that they can satisfy their wants. Now we will study upon what is the importance of the term perception. Perception forms a basis for feeling and actions in an organization. It is a science that paves way for matching new people in their job. It helps to avoid situations when perception becomes out of touch with reality. Perception is a basic cognitive process and the method in which a person perceives the environment, which in turn affects his behavior. It is an important instrument for the manager who wants to avoid making errors while dealing with other people and events in the workflows. Now we will study upon the factors that influence the term perception. The factors that influence the perceptual mechanism are mainly of two types. First, internal factors. Now we will discuss in brief about the internal factors that affect perception. The first internal factor is needs and desires. Perception varies according to the needs and desires of an individual. Another factor is personality. Personality of an individual has a profound impact on perceived behavior. Secure individuals are not harsh in their judgment of other individuals. Other individuals who have faith in themselves have favorable perception of other things, people and situation. After studying about the internal factors, the next topic of discussion is external factors. Now what are external factors? External factors are the size, frequency, intensity, status, contrast and novelty. Now we will discuss each and every topic in detail. What is size? Individual's attention is always attracted by size because the larger the size of the perceived stimulus, there is the highest probability of it being perceived. The next is frequency. What is frequency? The more the external stimulus is repeated, the more it will attract attention. The next is intensity. Selective perception is attracted with increased intensity. Next is status. What is status? The status of the perceiver influences perception to a large extent. Status and background exercise greater influence on the employees or people who are below status. Next external factor being contrast. When the external stimulus is in contrast with its environment, it tends to attract more attention than anything that blends with the environment. The next external factor is novelty. All novel external stimuli is bound to attract and change the perception of the perceiver. Perception is a process through which people receive, select, organize and interpret information from their environment. Through perception, people process information, then input into decisions and actions. Perceptual information is gathered from sight, hearing, touch, taste and smell. Now, factors that influence the perceptual process are: first, characteristics of the perceiver, which is influenced by past experience, needs and motives, personality, values and attitudes. Next, characteristics of the settings, which is influenced in the physical context, social context and organizational context. Next factor, characteristics of the perceived, where perceptual process is influenced by the characteristics of the perceived person, object or event, such as contrast, intensity. In figure, the examples are ground separation, size, motion, repetition or novelty. Now, after discussing about the perceptual process, there are certain stages of perceptual process. Now, we will discuss upon what are these stages. First one is information, attention and selection. There is a system of selective screening because tiny proportions of all information bombards a person. This is done through controlled processing and sometimes without the perceiver's conscious awareness. The next stage is organization of information. Selected information is organized through perceptual grouping, that is similarity, proximity, closure and continuity. The third stage is information interpretation. It is the process of discovery, the reason behind the ways stimuli are grouped. People may understand the same information differently or make different attribution about the information. Now, the next step, the fourth step is information retrieval, attention and selection, organization and interpretation are part of a memory, and all the information stored in the memory must be retrieved in order to be used. And finally, the last and the fifth one is response to the perceptual process. Response to the perceptual process can be in the form of thoughts, motivation, feelings, covert attitudes, overt behavior and action. A numeral of factors operate to shape and sometimes disfigure perception. These factors can exist in the perceiver, in the object or in the target being perceived, or in the context of the position in which the perception is made. Personal characteristics like attitude, personality, motives, interest, past experience and expectations heavily influence the perception. Now, there are some common perceptual distortions which include the first being stereotypes or prototypes. What are stereotypes and prototypes? It combines information on the category or class to which a person, situation or object belongs. Individuals is judged on the basis of one perception of the groups to which that person belongs. Stereotypes can be deeply ingrained and powerful enough to influence decisions as well as have a strong impact at the organization stage. Individual differences are deeply observed. The second distortion is halo effect. The tendency to draw a general impression about an object on the basis of single characteristics such as intelligence is known as halo effect. Now, sociability or experience are another examples. It occurs when one attribute of a person or situation is used to develop an overall impression of the individual or situation. This is likely to occur in the organization stage. Individual differences are observed as it is important in performance appraisal process. Third distortion is selective perception, the tendency to selectively understand what one sees on the basis of one's interest, background, experience and attitudes. Vested interest has a significant influence in these cases. There is a tendency to single out those aspects of a situation, company, person or object that are consistent with one's needs, values or attitudes. Strongest impact is at the attention stage. Perception checking with other person can help counter the adverse impact of selective perception. The fourth distortion is projection. It is the project of one's personal attributes to other individuals. It is likely to take place in the interpretation stage and can be controlled through a high degree of self-awareness and sympathy. The fifth one is contrast effect. What is contrast effect? Contrast effect is the assessment of a person's characteristics and it is affected by evaluation with other people recently encountered who rank higher or lower on the same characteristics. The sixth distortion is self-fulfilling prophecy. Now what is this? It is the tendency to create or find in another situation that which one is likely to find. It can have positive or negative outcomes. Now managers should adopt positive and optimistic approaches to people at work. Now we will study upon what is the attribution theory. What is attribution theory? Attribution theory explains the way in which people judge people differently. It also refers to the process by which an individual assigns causes to the behavior he conceives. People observe both the behavior of individual in an organization and its causes. Reaction to other behaviors is evaluated with a heavy influence of their perception than the others are responsible for their behavior. It aids in perceptual interpretation by focus on how people try to understand the cause of a certain event, assess responsibility for the outcomes of the event and evaluate the personal qualities of the people involved in the event. Now, after studying upon the attribution theory, we will discuss upon what are the determinants of attribution. The attribution theory suggests that by observing an individual's behavior, we tend to establish whether it is internally caused or externally caused. Behavior that is internally caused is understood to be under the control of an individual, but externally caused behavior is a result of outside factors. Generally, the person is seen as forced to exhibit a behavior by the situation in which he is. External causes are within the person's environment. Next are the factors that affect internal and external attribution. The attribution theory suggests that by observing an individual behavior, we tend to establish whether it is internally caused or externally caused. Behavior that is internally caused is understood to be under the control of an individual, but externally caused behavior is a result of external factors or outside factors. Generally, the person is seen as forced to exhibit a behavior by the situation in he is. External causes are within the person's environment. The factors affecting internal and external attribution are: first, distinctiveness. What is distinctiveness? It is the consistency of a person's behavior across situation. The next factor is consensus. What is consensus? It is the likelihood of others responding in a similar way. The third one is consistency. It is whether an individual responds in same way across time. Fundamental attribution error. Perceptual distortion is seen on two counts. First, fundamental attribution error. The tendency to underestimate authority of external factors and overestimate the authority of internal factors while making the judgments about the behavior of others. The next is self-serving bias. The tendency for individuals to qualify their own successes to internal factors and put the blame for failure on external factors. The basic process of attribution applies across all cultures. It suggests that we observe behavior and then attribute causes to it. We attempt all the time to explain why people behave in the way in which they do. The process of attribution is based on the perception of reality. Now we will understand what is perception in organizational behavior. All the people in the organization are always judgmental, that is, they are always judging each other. Team members immediately size up a new person. Co-workers are always evaluated on the basis of the effort they put into their job. The first being employment. Employers may stereotype applicants on the basis of caste, religion, etc., which may affect the overall perception of the applicants. An interviewer's attitude towards the applicant's attributes affect the perception of the interviewer. The next is performance appraisal. Performance appraisal to a large extent helps in the assessment of the employee's shortcomings, identifying strengths and provide basis for rewards. What the managers perceive to be good or bad employee characteristics or behavior will to a large extent influence the appraisal outcome. The next is motivation. Pay satisfaction, equitable pay, promotion and pay raise, if perceived correctly by the employees, can help to keep them motivated enough to work hard. The next is loyalty assessment. Whistleblowers in an organization is often perceived as troublemakers by the management. Why? Because it is the perception of certain managers which helps them to identify the loyal and the disloyal in the organization. Next, we will discuss upon what is the link between perception and individual decision. Now we will see in detail. Individuals in organization make decisions, choices from among two or more alternatives. Organizations have begun empower their non-managerial employees with decision-making authority reserved for managers alone. Individual decision-making is an important part of organizational behavior. The way individuals make decisions and the value of their choices are largely influenced by their perception. Decision-making occurs as a reaction to a problem. Awareness that a problem exists and that a conclusion might reach or might not be needed is a perceptual issue. Every decision requires individuals to interpret and evaluate information. Perception will answer the question as to which data are relevant to the decision and which are not. Individuals need to develop alternatives and evaluate their strengths and weaknesses. Perceptual process affect the final outcome. Throughout the entire decision-making process, perceptual distortion often face that can bias analysis and conclusion. Let us now summarize what we have discussed so far. Perception is a unique explanation of a situation, not a precise recording of it. Second, perception is a very difficult cognitive process that yields a unique image of the world that may be quite different from reality. Perception acts as a filter in organizational behavior. Individuals should view the world in dynamic terms because then it will act as the basis of their perception and behavior. There is a relationship between perception and decision making.